The best way to understand a user-defined scalar function is just to create a very simple one so that you can grab a quick understanding of how this thing works. And so let's just jump into that. Let's first of all look at the table we're going to use. We're going to use the sales.sales order header table. So I'll execute this, and we're going to take a close look at using a function to add two columns together here. Now, we could do this a lot of different ways, but we're going to add the tax amount and freight. So this is the extras, if you will. This is the tax amount and the freight that we're spending or that we're charging the end users. So this is not actual cost of products, but it's kind of the cost of providing the products. So I'll Control R to get rid of that. And let's jump down here and create our function. So we're going to type create function. Then we're going to give the name, and I'm going to call this T and F, just like that, for tax and freight. Then we're going to jump down and we're going to open parentheses and then close them. And our function is going to be inside here. And we're going to basically set up two variables, and they're the money data type. And by the way I figured out what data type I want on that is I just went into the database and I went into that table. And if you remember, that is the sales.sales order header table. And right there it is. By mousing over, I can see it. If I go to the columns, let me go ahead and make this wider. If I go down to that tax amount, notice it's money and the freight is money. So that's how I knew what data type to put on these. That's a little shortcut for you. And I'll create a freight variable called money. So that is what gets passed in. And then we tell it that when you send something back, it returns an integer. And then here is our statement. And we're going to put our code between the begin and end statement. And all we're going to do is return whatever is in the tax variable added to, make this easy to read, whatever is in the freight variable. Pretty straightforward. Now I will just highlight all this. There is my function. I'll execute it, and my function just got created. So I'll Control R, make that go away. Then I'm going to come on down and let's use our function. So now we're going to select the sales order ID. Then I'm going to use DBO because that's the way that function was created in the default schema of DBO for me. And notice I'm going to pass in tax amount and the freight amount. So the tax amount column and the freight column get passed in to the function that I created, which was T and F. And then I'm going to assign an alias for that column, and I'll just call it tax freight. And then we're going to pull that from the sales.sales order header table. Now, I will execute this, and notice what came back. For sales order 43,659, the tax plus the freight's 25.88. For 43,660, it is 163. And if I want to check that, I will come up here and do tax amount freight from sales order header, where sales order ID equals 43,660. And so I'll execute that. And we'll do a quick little check here. And tax amount was 124.38. If you add those together, that comes up to 162 plus this change added in. So that's going to be 163. So let's go back down here and execute it one more time. And you can see that that comes to 163. So it's working. Now, here's the thing you need to understand about functions, and this is why they're not used a whole lot, because this returned 31,465 rows, okay? This function executed 31,465 times. It has to execute for every row to compute these numbers, okay? So if I build a big, complicated bit of code in here in my function, then that code has got to run every time. So these things can become a performance problem if you get too elegant with them. So just keep that in mind. When you use a function like this, you are going to execute that function for as many rows as come back in the table. But there's a lot of power here, and you can use them a lot of different ways. So anytime you have yourself doing anything over and over and over, you may want to think function, especially when you need to return it like this on a column basis and row by row. These user-defined scalar functions are fantastic for that. So anyway, that's a real quick look at a scalar user-defined function.